And we are back in the saddle. I'm gonna try to go out on the deck and film this, but this may not work, and it may not work because I'm gonna tell you, it got cold quick in Alabama. It's not that bad, but when the wind blows, it just really is a biting wind, you know. It was in the 30s this morning, and I thought I was going to just have to turn around and go back to the beach because it really got cold quickly. It's going to be in the 30s in the morning, but it's really beautiful. It's just, my goodness, I can't believe how fast the weather changed. Anyway, back in the saddle, good to be back home, back at work, back in the old routine. I spent yesterday watching a Tucker Carlson broadcast that I highly recommend you check out. I'm sure it's available on YouTube. Tucker does some really great interviews with people, and I spent a couple of hours watching the latest interview that he did with Mark Halpern, who is a journalist. And it was a wide-ranging interview where they covered basically the state of America and the election, the upcoming election, what have you. I don't know where Mark Halpern is politically. Tucker didn't ask, nor should he have. He didn't really need to. Halpern is a journalist. I'm not sure who he's affiliated with presently. He may be a free agent for all I know. But it was a fascinating and intriguing interview, and toward the end of it, Mark Halpern really caught my attention when, in particular, when Tucker Carlson asked him, what happens after the election? That's what I want to talk about in this video. What happens in America after the election? What is your idea about what happens after the election? No matter who wins, he started out with what happens if Trump wins, what happens if Harris wins. This really piqued my attention, and Mark Halpern said, if Trump wins, he said he believes that the United States is going to have the greatest mental health crisis in our history. Now think about that for a moment. He believes there's going to be violence. How widespread, he doesn't know. How it manifests, he's not sure. But he honestly believes that a lot of Americans are just absolutely going to lose their minds if Trump wins this election. I think he's probably right about that. Conversely, Tucker said, well, what if Harris wins this election? And he was saying that... God forbid, first of all, but he was saying that he believes that if the Republicans hold the Senate, at least, that he can, that they can delay or stop a lot of her appointees. But you know, sooner or later, she's going to get some of her people into place, regardless. But he doesn't think we would see the sort of widespread mental breakdown that he believes we will see when and if Trump wins this election. Folks, when you stop and think about it, there are so many people on the left who have just absolutely lost their ever-loving minds. They have no restraint. They have no common sense left, it seems. They're just unhinged. You see this on shows like The View. You see it with people like Keith Olbermann, the leftist media. They are just, it's like Trump is the Antichrist incarnate, and it just, to me, just doesn't make any sense. But that's where we are. These people are just completely unhinged. Why is that? Is it because so many of them have led a life of privilege and don't have any knowledge of hard times? I mean, really, why is this? Why do you think they're behaving like this? This is what is leading me to this question. I realize that a lot of people in America dislike Donald Trump, and their dislike of Trump is based on personality. In other words, they are turned off by his abrasive personality. I get it. I understand it. But I, as a Southern man, can understand that this is how Trump has always been. He's from the Queens, I believe. I don't think he's from the Bronx. I think he's from Queens. This is just how at least Trump acts, and a lot of people up there act. It's just his personality. I don't know if it really is just his personality that is causing these people to lose their minds to the point that we've now apparently had multiple assassination attempts on this man. And yet it's the people on the right that are supposedly crazy. It's the people on the right that are apparently so full of hatred. It's completely bass backwards. Up is down, down is up. It just doesn't make sense. It's not logical at all. Is there something else in play here? Is it really that they're just so turned off by Trump's personality that this has got them acting this way? Or is there something more deep-seated that I'm just not tapping into here? Is it that Trump represents perhaps an authority figure and that turns them off? Is it about abortion? Is it about, do they perceive perhaps that Trump is a threat to their way of life because maybe they are so dependent upon government as being the God in their life, and they see Trump as a threat to that? Is it because they lead lives of such debauchery and they see Trump as a threat to that? I'm just asking questions. I don't honestly know the answer. When I approach an election, I try and do so based on matters of policy and issues. When I look at Trump versus Harris, setting aside personalities and just looking at qualifications and policies and where they stand on issues, that's how I generally make up my mind as to who I'm going to vote for, right? So this is, to my way of thinking, these people like the Morning Joe and The View and Keith Olbermann and the leftist media, they don't approach it like this. Their whole summation of everything is based on personality, and that's not logical to me. I look at this thing through matter of policy, through matter of issues, and I don't cast my vote based on Trump's personality or Harris's personality. There's a lot about Trump that I don't like. I've made that clear on my channel. There's a lot about Trump in terms of matters of policy and political doctrine and issues where I am at great variance with him. I do not agree with him, particularly on fiscal matters. But Trump draws me in with his approach, generally speaking, to foreign policy. I'm not a libertarian per se, but I do hold to a libertarian position in terms of foreign policy. I don't believe we need to be involved in the affairs of other nations. When it comes to Russia and Ukraine, I've made no secret of whose side I'm on in that conflict, but as an American, I prefer to remain neutral. And if I were a politician, I would simply say, if I were president, let them fight out their own problems. We're not getting involved. It is not our concern. The same with Israel and Gaza and Hamas. I would not get us involved. I would just say, you tend to your own affairs. I don't care where it is. It's none of our business, and we shouldn't be involved. It's as simple as that. And I know that if Harris assumed the presidency, we would get a continuation of Biden policies, which means we would continue to meddle in the affairs of other countries where we have no business being. Now, with Trump, we're still going to get that to some degree, but to a lesser degree, I believe. And that is a winning issue for me in terms of which of these two people better represent the ideals that I hold to. We need to do something about spending. It's certainly not going to happen with Harris. It may happen with Trump. I don't know. Another thing that I am encouraged by is that apparently Trump is serious about getting Elon Musk to tackle government waste and efficiency, to actually eliminate some of the bureaucracy that we have in this nation. That's getting my attention. So I can look at things from an objective standpoint, an unemotional standpoint, look at things in terms of policy and issues and not so much personality. And that's why, to me, this is a no-brainer, and Trump should take this election, and will, I hope and pray. But Halpern got into it with Tucker with regard to what are called these so-called battleground states, because Tucker was asking Mark Halpern about the election, what he believes is going to happen, particularly in the 7 swing states or so-called battleground states. These states are as follows. These are the states that supposedly the victor has to take, or at least he has to take 1 or 2 of them in order to win the election. It is a given, apparently, that states like New York and Minnesota and California, places like this, are going to go blue. They're going to vote Democrat. It's a given that states such as Florida and South Carolina and Texas are going to go red. They're going to vote for Trump. But then you consider these battleground states that are apparently up for grabs, and these states are North Carolina, that could apparently go either way, is the thinking. Nevada. I do not know how to pronounce the name of this state. Can you all help me down below? I've thought it was Nevada. Tucker Carlson swears up and down it's Nevada. I think probably either works, but I would defer to Nevadans to tell us how to pronounce the name of their state. Wisconsin is a battleground state. Michigan is a battleground state. Unbelievably to me, but I guess it's the way of the world, my home state of Georgia is a battleground state, apparently. Arizona is a battleground state, and the 7th state here is the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and the thinking is, among many, as goes Pennsylvania, so goes the election. Some say that whoever wins Pennsylvania wins the presidency. Halpern pretty much subscribes to that, pretty much. He says it's possible to lose Pennsylvania and win, but in all likelihood, whoever wins Pennsylvania is probably going to win the election. And then Tucker spent some time with Halpern going through each of these battleground states and who was winning in each battleground state. I'm not going to get into all of that, but this is what I want to get to. All of my life, I have been a political junkie. I've always been fascinated and intrigued by politics since as young as I can remember. I am 63 years old. I was born in 1961. I can still remember watching the 1968 Democratic Convention in Chicago, where the nomination was ultimately won by Minnesota's Hubert Humphrey. Hubert Humphrey, who I remember my parents saying was a left-wing lunatic. They called him a communist, all kinds of stuff. And it occurs to me that in today's climate, Humphrey may well be a right-wing nut job for all we know. But that was the year, if some of you that are my age, maybe a little bit younger, may recall that was probably going to be the year that Bobby Kennedy took the nomination and probably the presidency, I'm thinking. But you all know what happened. And, of course, they eventually, Humphrey got the nomination and then lost to Nixon in the 68 election. I recall it was a three-way. I believe McCarthy was in that as well, if I'm not mistaken. And then, of course, in 72, Nixon came back and won in a landslide against George McGovern of South Dakota. And then in 76, it was Ford versus Carter. Ford, the incumbent, versus Georgia's Jimmy Carter. Oh, my goodness. But what I'm getting to is 1980, and I want to draw a comparison in the, the 1980 election with what's about to happen here in 2024, I believe. 1980 was the first year I could vote in the presidential election, and I cast my first vote for the winner, Ronald Reagan. I can remember in the weeks prior to that election, the general consensus was that Carter was going to win, not by a landslide, but he was going to win. He had a comfortable lead in most of the polls. I well remember reading newspaper articles by a lot of the pundits of the day. The majority of them seemed to say that Carter had it in the bag and he was going to win. Reagan was not going to win this election. And then we came to the night of the election. I will never forget this as long as I live. I remember how it went down. The polls closed at 7 p.m. in the different time zones. While people were still standing in line on the West Coast to vote, Jimmy Carter placed a phone call to Ronald Reagan, who was in the shower, and he had to get out of the shower to take Jimmy Carter's phone call, who conceded the election to Ronald Reagan. It was over, and Reagan won that election in a landslide. How many of you remember that? And then he came back 4 years later and won another massive landslide against Walter Mondale. I think Mondale won one or two. It was Nixon-esque. Mondale may have won Minnesota, where he was from. He may have won Massachusetts. I don't remember, but it was a rout. Reagan won re-election handily. This is just my own opinion. Take it or leave it. I'm getting the same kind of vibe about this election that I have regarding the 1980 election between Carter and Reagan. Everybody, it seemed, thought it was going to be razor thin. Some people thought Reagan would pull it out. We were all hoping Reagan would pull it out, but everybody was biting their fingernails. But so many of the prognosticators and the experts were saying Carter was going to win re-election. Reagan won in a landslide. Now, I get it. You factor in the fraud that is always in every election. Even factoring in the fraud, folks, this is my current take on this election. I believe that Trump is going to win this thing handily. That's what I believe. You take these battleground states, I believe Trump, and Halpern touched on this, I believe Trump is going to win Pennsylvania. One of the reasons I say that is because I think the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, is a little bit miffed at Harris for not selecting him to be his vice presidential nominee, as she should have done. It was a boneheaded move for her to select Tim Walz, if you ask me. I don't get that at all. I believe Trump wins Pennsylvania. I believe Trump wins Arizona, another battleground state. I don't know if Kerry Lake is going to win, but I believe Trump will. I believe Trump takes Michigan. That's what I believe. I believe Trump takes Wisconsin and Georgia. I believe he takes North Carolina, and I believe he takes Nevada. Those are the 7 battleground states. I believe Trump wins every one of them, and I believe that this thing is over. I think that Harris is going to win the typical states, the Californias, the New Yorks. But think about this for a moment. Do you realize where Trump has been campaigning lately? He has been campaigning in New York and in California. Now answer me this. Were Trump not confident of a victory, why would he waste time and resources campaigning in those 2 utterly blue states? Why would he go there? Why would he not be in the battleground states? Why instead of California is he not in Pennsylvania? Why instead of New York is he not in Wisconsin or Michigan? Why is that? Why would he waste time and resources in these states? I get it. He's there to support local candidates. But the fact of the matter is, folks, if Trump believed, these people have their own internal polls, which are more accurate than the generic polls that we see in the news every day. And I think that Trump knows something that maybe you and I are not privy to. I think he's got information that we perhaps do not. I don't think Trump would be in California and New York if he really thought that there were some tight battleground states where he needed to go shore up his support. If Trump were not confident of victory, I believe he'd be in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, in Michigan, in Georgia, in North Carolina. I really believe that. And he is there, but there's no way, in my estimation, he would be spending time in a utterly Democratic stronghold like New York or California, yet there he is. I understand, again, the component of fraud, but I believe Trump is going to win this thing, and I believe he's going to win it handily. One reason is because she's such a poor candidate. She is terrible, folks. This woman is a blithering idiot. She's terrible. She's not intelligent at all. She is copying Trump on matters of policy now. She's flailing. She is a terrible candidate. And I think Trump has this in the bag. I really do. That's where I'm at on this. Now, what happens after Trump wins, if he wins? And I could be wrong. I absolutely could be all wet on this. I absolutely acknowledge that. I could be wrong. I'm still going to go and vote, and I want you to do the same. Only if you're voting for him. What happens with a Trump victory? Are there people on the left that are going to lose their minds? Are there going to be riots? I believe there will be. But we've got to have law and order. And, people can be disgruntled all they want. But, in these big cities, you're probably going to see the same kind of violence that we've seen before. The looting and the rioting. It's up to these governors in these states to maintain law and order. It's as simple as that. But that's my take on the election. I think Trump has this thing won. I think that the Republicans are going to take control of all three branches of government. And I hope at that point Trump begins to dole out some justice to some of these people that need to have justice doled out to them. People like Jack Smith. I want to see some perp walks from some high-profile people who are guilty of treason, if you ask me. But it all remains to be seen. We shall see. Give me your comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what we're facing, and I'll talk to you soon.